A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. All right, so on Wednesday afternoon, the gun control bill that has been worked on behind closed doors in Massachusetts for several months now was finally released by the House and Senate as they rush towards a vote, perhaps as early as today, to vote on this bill, more than 100 pages long, chock full of legislatees. You know, there are ways to write pieces of legislation that are readable and understandable. You can peruse this and say, okay, this is what's changed, this is what's not. That is not the case, at least with this bill in Massachusetts. I mean, it cites existing statutes. You got to go back and you got to read the statute book. So I wanted to have Jim Wallace from the Gun Owners Action League join me on the program today because they've had time now to peruse 111 pages worth of this gun control nonsense to actually see what's inside this bill. Now, a summary was released on Wednesday afternoon. We wrote about this at bearingarms.com, highlighting some of the more egregious problems with the bill, but I imagine that there is more to learn from Jim Wallace and the Gun Owners Action League. We'll get to that in just one second. Before we do, though, let's talk about this for a moment. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and 401k hard. With inflation rising, global uncertainty, it's no wonder that central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you have not thought about gold yet, now's the time. Trust Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Text GOLDEN to 1-800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree. Physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD. And now, let's turn from gold to gold. The Gun Owners Action League and Executive Director Jim Wallace, who joined us to talk about the latest iteration, perhaps the final iteration of the Lawful Citizens Imprisonment Act. Take a look and a listen. Jim Wallace, thank you so much for coming on the program, sir. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. Unfortunately, it's seldom good news, but here we go again.
Yeah, the
battleground state, right?
The other shoe has dropped. That's right. So my first question, before we get into the details of the bill that emerged from this conference committee, is it fair to call this the Lawful Citizens Imprisonment Act? Is that what goal? I know that's what that's what you guys called the original House bill.
Yeah.
The Senate bill was more narrow in its scope. Is this a Lawful Citizens Imprisonment Act that has emerged from this conference committee?
It certainly could be. You know, there's so many things going on here. Number one, Mike and I went to work deciphering this bill yesterday. We spent hours, into the evening, and overnight they came up with new language. So pretty much everything we did yesterday is, well, kind of moot at this point.
Wait. I'm sorry. Time out for just a second, Jim. Hang on.
Yeah.
They've been working on this bill behind closed doors for like 3 months now, right? Maybe since March. March. Okay. They released the text of this bill Wednesday afternoon. And then Wednesday night, they have new language? Yeah, what the heck is going on?
It was a further amended bill. It may be something as simple as they added a few sections and moved a few sections. But, the standard way we do things is we go section by section. Section 34 does this, section 61 does this.
Yeah.
And now pretty much this morning, Mike had to start from scratch with the new bill that's actually posted up. They even screwed up because this is a conference committee with 6 legislators, 3 Senate, 3 House. I guess when they originally posted it, what happens is they need at least 4 people to sign what they call the jacket of the report to move it along. And only 4 of them signed the jacket, all 4 Democrats. But even when I guess they originally posted it, they had one of the Republicans as signing the jacket, and he called and screamed at him, get my name off there. So that was one of the changes they had to do. But, we're looking at, I don't even know what the page count is now, but we're 114, 115 page bill. And now we have to go through it again to make sure they didn't sneak something in there. But at this point, it doesn't matter. It's going to pass today. Probably both the House and Senate will pass it. They will have no idea what they're voting on. And that's the big kicker. A lot of people say, well, did they read the bill? Doesn't matter if you just read it. You have to understand it. You can change one word like Maura Healey did in 2016. Change one word and suddenly hundreds of thousands of people are criminals. And because they kept rushing this thing, there's actually mistakes in there, but we can't look at it as mistakes. So
yeah,
it's this is going to take some time to tear apart. The other thing, Cam, there's no funding. There's huge requirements in there for the state to set up systems, for the state to set up training for police, for retailers. The state police have to go through different things. And I think one of the weird things I saw was if you're denied a license, you can actually now appeal to the colonel of the state police. Got to reread that one again, but it's like, what? So we're talking, I don't know, $100 million in funding that's going to be needed. And good luck trying to get software companies to do that job fast, because it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So, we could be in a situation. Well, the 2014 bill, remember you and I talked about that a long time ago. It's just after Newtown. Huge bill. There was over 100 sections in that. It was never funded. Never. Nothing in that bill was ever funded. So here we're going to have a situation where if we don't comply, you're in serious trouble. And maybe the reason is because the state doesn't even have the systems in place to let us comply. So, again, people say, well, yeah, but if you take it to court, you're going to win that one. Yeah, but you have to take it to court.
Right.
And more money, more time. And, what are they going to say? It's just crazy. But we're going to continue to go through it, figure out, what are the options for proceeding in federal court if we need to. And by the looks of it, we're going to need to. So.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it is just so, this entire process has been so crazy. You talk about the difficulty in reading the bill, and you're right. I mean, changing one word can have a huge impact. But as I talked about in your introduction, if you just read this bill, it's really hard to know what's going on because it references, previous sections of code. So you got to have basically two windows on your laptop open. You got to have one window looking at the text of the bill and then one with all of the current statutes, so you know what is changing. They don't make it easy to figure out what's going on here. And then, again, to this entire process, going back almost a year ago when the House introduced this bill for the first time, we started seeing the games being played where, there was one hearing where the public could offer testimony, and then and it was basically, a joint hearing between the House and Senate bill. They have taken so many steps to deprive the public of having the opportunity for input here. And even now, releasing this bill on Wednesday, the session expires on July 31st. There is no reason why they could not have released the text of this bill, given lawmakers Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to read this bill, understand this bill, and then hold a vote on Monday. That wouldn't impact the legislative session at all. But as you say, they are trying to ram this thing through as quickly as possible before gun owners have a chance to know what's in it, before lawmakers have a chance to know what's in it.
Yeah.
And this is by design. This is not by accident. This is not, well, we're slaves to the calendar. No, they are choosing to put this on a fast track and to try to get it to Governor Healey's desk before anybody really is able to understand what's involved here.
Yeah. Well, you got to pass it before you know what's in it, right?
The Pelosi option. I mean,
so it's clear that this bill cannot withstand the light of day. And that's what they've done this the entire time. They know the language can't withstand the light of day because it'll be challenged by so many people. So they have to get it done, in the dark of night, and then suddenly they have to vote on this. I mean, I remember at the end of last session when they snuck in some suitability language into an IT bill.
Yeah.
And we were there at the State House, and as reps were coming in, hey, this is what you're going to vote on today. We're not voting on that today. Yes, you are. You better start asking leadership. And sure enough, it was in the bill, and they didn't even know it was in the bill. So, and it was an IT bill that everybody in the building wanted it because it was going to update the courts all their local court systems, and they had to vote for it or lose all the money for their court systems. So it was just, and here we go again, here's the language, 114 pages. Here, dissect this and vote on it tomorrow. They're not going to dissect this. They're not even going to take the time to read it.
Well, I took a look at the summary that you all posted on your website yesterday. This was a summary that came from the legislature, or at least one legislator. So this wasn't your summary, but
No.
even this summary released by, I presume, a supporter of the bill. I mean, there's some really big problems here. So prohibiting adults younger than 21 from purchasing or possessing semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, right? We've just seen the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals say that Minnesota's law banning under 21s from applying for a concealed carry license is unconstitutional because 18-year-olds are a part of the political community. Whether you like it or not, they are. And that means that they have the full flower of their Second Amendment rights. So if a 22-year-old can buy a semi-automatic rifle or shotgun, a 21-year-old should be able to buy one. A 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, as long as you're an adult, you should be able to buy that firearm. Then you got expanding the state's ban on assault weapons, basically so-called assault weapons, basically codifying, as you say, what Maura Healey did as Attorney General by drastically expanding the number of prohibited firearms. There's a ban on the sale of 3D printers that are, quote, specifically marketed as capable of making firearms, even though the bill says people can make their own firearms. They just have to serialize them. Apparently, you can't use a printer to make one. And you and I have talked about this before, Jim. There is that provision in there that requires live fire training for anybody applying for a gun license in Massachusetts, which is required to both possess and to carry a firearm, right? So again, there just simply aren't a lot of publicly accessible ranges in Massachusetts. I mean, that provision alone, what is that going to do for would-be gun owners? Are we going to see this bottleneck where you got people who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights, but they can't because they can't get the training that the state is requiring them to get?
Yeah, the other discussion too, Cam, with that is that the clubs always, encourage training, and they when our trainers come in and do their work. But if the state is mandating that they have to open their doors to citizens for training, my first statement when I talked to the chair of Ways and Means in the Senate was, okay, but you need to supply the clubs with liability insurance. You need to cover that because it's a state mandate. So if you're going to mandate that people go to these ranges, enforcing the ranges. Now, what happens if the ranges just say, no, we're not complying. We're not going to help you with this.
Yeah.
So then what? In Massachusetts is one of the few states in the country that don't have state-run ranges. States all over the country have that. So yeah, that's a huge problem. Going back a couple steps about the 3D printing, it also bans the use and sale of computerized milling machines. I was a machinist 1,000 years ago. That technology is so old it's not even funny. But so machine shops can't even buy and sell computerized milling machines anymore. So, and I can't have one in my basement. I used to know a ton of guys that had those things in their basement.
Yeah.
And now you can't. The other weird thing too is that the data that they're going to start collecting and making available to the public, huge amounts of data that will be allowed, the public will be allowed. And one of the first pieces I saw was a law goal passed in the 80s protecting the personal information of licensed gun owners in Mass. And it's weird because all they did was take out 3 words because it said something like rifle, shotgun, firearm, which used to mean handgun, machine gun, and ammunition. And they took out all of those except for ammunition. So it's like, but you left the law in place, but you just took out the items. Makes no sense. So I don't know. It's going to take a long time to go through this and figure out what the heck they've done, if they even know what they've done.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, I mentioned the data that's going to be collected and disseminated in my post yesterday. And they say that this is going to be, aggregate data It's going to be, anonymity is going to be involved so that gun owners aren't going to have their personal details released. Fine, whatever. You can make that claim. But Jim, you know what happened in California when they started collecting this data, right? And Rob Bonda, the attorney general, had this gun violence dashboard that he put out. There was a data leak. Hundreds of thousands of gun owners had their personal information made publicly available.
Yep.
So even if the state of Massachusetts says, "Hey, gun owners, don't worry, right? Your data is protected," I don't buy it. I mean, as you say, this is going to be a huge amount of very personal data that is going to be then, anonymized, supposedly by the state of California. But that data is going to be available. And frankly, if there's one thing that we've learned over the past few years, it's that no matter how secure a data system supposedly is, people will find a way around it. I mean, you've got hospitals that are being subjected to, cyber attacks and demands of hackers. You had the data leak in California, which was supposedly the fault of somebody at the Cal DOJ. It wasn't an actual hack. But between government incompetence and malicious actors from the outside, I don't think gun owners in Massachusetts can honestly and realistically have an expectation of privacy.
No,
if this goes forward.
Last year, we had an entire city that was hacked. The city of Lowell. Literally, their streetlights didn't work. The entire city was down as far as the government goes. Every single thing they did was down. Now, the other piece too is, even though our names and addresses may not be up there, the previous system that's still up there now gave each of us an ID number. Didn't say, Cam has this number. It just showed you as an ID number. Well, it was not too hard for anybody to go through there and go, "Hey, wait a minute, that's the gun I sold on that day. So, geez, I know Jim's ID number now." So I could go through the whole thing and figure out, what Jim has bought in the last 20 years and who's he sold to and all this other stuff. So it's so easy to break that information. And as you know, there's folks in the media that have threatened to use that information over the years. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just insane. It's insidious what they're doing. They're basically treating us like cattle. You're going to do what we tell you to do and go where you're told to do and told to go. And it's just, but this is going to take some serious work over the next week or so to tear this thing apart, let our members know exactly what's going on. The other thing we have to have a discussion about, probably starting today, Cam, is, one of our most popular classes is mass gun law for citizens. And John Green, our trainer, who's been with us, 25 years, he teaches that almost every week, travels the state. And my question as executive director now is, are we going to do that anymore? Because now we have to retrain gun owners, period. Police have to be retrained. The courts are going to have to be retrained. And are we going to put the effort into actually doing that all over again? Matter of fact, there's a book on mass gun law that's published by a retired chief of police. And he does 6 to 8 hour seminars for law enforcement. That's what he does for a job now that he's retired.
Mm-hmm.
And when this stuff started happening, he said, "I'm done. I'm not doing this again. I've spent 25 years trying to teach these laws, and there's still questions we can't answer. And are you going to change everything? I'm done." So that's going to have to be a conversation here at Goal as to whether we're going to go down that road again.
Speaking of law enforcement, Massachusetts Association of Chiefs of Police came out in opposition to the House bill. Originally, excuse me. The Senate bill they signed off on. What have you heard of anything from law enforcement about what has come out of the conference committee?
Well, see, that issue is very important, because when they went against the House version, it was a vote of the entire membership of the Mass Chiefs of Police. And it was the only unanimous vote that anybody can ever remember. When it came to the Senate version, the members weren't even told about it. It was the executive committee that approved it. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's, they were trying to regain some traction in the state house after what happened in the House of Representatives. So they have also changed executive directors. Their past one just retired, I don't know, not too long ago, a month ago. So they might be reorganizing a little bit, but Yeah, this is it's going to be a doozy. So wait, it's kind of funny because I can't wait until like the colonel of the state police and all the chiefs start reading this, and we're supposed to do what? Yeah, yeah. And right now the state police is in a lot of turmoil too. So we're going to have to see what happens.
Just like the gun laws in the state of Massachusetts. All right, Jim Wallace. Again, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that you and Mike Harris and the folks at Goal are going to continue to, comb through this bill, find out all the devils in the details here. So I would encourage folks, go to goal.org. Jim and the folks at Goal do a great job of updating the website with all of the latest information as it becomes available to them. So it is a fantastic resource for gun owners, not only in the state of Massachusetts, but Second Amendment supporters around the country. Goal.org. And Jim, I am sure we will be having you back again here very soon to talk about the aftermath of this bill, which, as you say, they're expecting to vote on this today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I expect it's going to be on the governor's desk by tomorrow.
That is absolutely insane. All right. Jim Wallace, Executive Director of the Gun Owners Action League. Thank you so much for your time today, Jim.
All right, Cam. Thanks for having me.
We'll let you get back to the salt mines. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Now, my thanks to Jim Wallace for joining us on the program. I imagine the next time that we speak with Jim, it may be to talk about the new lawsuit that the Gun Owners Action League is filing. All right, let's turn our attention now to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, which takes us to New York City and the Queen's Eagle, which is reporting on lengthy delays on Rikers Island lengthy stays rather on Rikers Island, jumping as cases are slowing down in courts. Now, why is this a part of the recidivist report? Well, because when you keep people behind bars for 3 years or more without them going to trial, guess what happens? They get to raise constitutional arguments that, hey, I'm being deprived of my right to a speedy trial. They get out, and some of them may go on to commit more crimes. According to Jacob Kay with the Queen's Eagle, the number of detainees who have had to wait 3 years or more on Rikers Island while their cases make their way through the court system has increased by nearly 180% over the last 5 years, according to a new report from New York City Comptroller Brad Lander. A report issued Tuesday saying between 2019 and 2023, there was a 179% increase in the number of felony cases that took 3 years or more to reach a conclusion. The lengthy stays, according to the new report, caused by a number of factors that are slowing cases down in the judicial system. The delays really kicked off, were made exponentially worse by the closure of the court system during COVID back in 2020. The Queen's Eagle says that has contributed to a ballooning population on Rikers Island that has threatened the city's ability to stick to its legally mandated plan to shutter the notoriously dangerous jail complex. It's also costed the city more than $800 million a year and has potentially contributed to the already high level of violence on Rikers Island. The comptroller, Lander, said no one should have to wait 3 years for their day in court. In the inhumane and violent conditions on Rikers Island or anywhere else, the increasingly long delays of New York City's justice system are not only violating the constitutional rights of detainees, they are also wasting hundreds of millions of dollars each year in New York City taxpayer money without making our city any safer. So, how bad is this? Again, 180% increase. Well, I mean, that could be, 3 people to, maybe 7 or 8, right? Now, of the 207 murder cases that required more than a year to process last year, the average detainee was in the Department of Corrections custody for 3 years. That's the average length of time for murder defendants. Now, again, we know that New York City is violating our Second Amendment rights, but we do have a right to a speedy trial as well. And these defendants can make plausible claims that their rights are being denied to them because they have been stuck in jail for years without having a chance to defend their innocence in court. Now, again, in most cases, these incidents are going to result in a guilty plea, some sort of deal, right? But, you look at this and you got to think, okay, well, how many of these individuals want to go to trial? At least want to take their chance at trial? Because a lot of these things, I guess, could be resolved via a plea deal, right? If someone's been in prison for 18 months or at Rikers Island, not in prison, in jail, awaiting trial for a year and a half, prosecutors can say, hey, you know what, plead guilty to this charge, we'll let you go with time served. And I'm sure that that does happen. But again, what is also happening is that an increasing number of inmates at Rikers Island have not been convicted. They have not been found guilty by a jury of their peers. They have not had their day in court. And we will see more of these individuals raising claims that their constitutional rights are being violated. They will be released. It will be the fault of New York City. And as Lander said, this isn't making anybody any safer, any more than New York City's gun control laws are. But the city, I guess, has a way of violating all kinds of constitutional rights. Now, today's armed citizen story, I wrote about this at Bearing Arms. An absolutely terrifying story. Man shot and killed breaking into an Oakland County, Michigan home with an axe in order to find his ex-girlfriend. Now, this 67-year-old had an order of protection out against him. He actually was subject to a red flag order. And last month, about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks or so ago, police removed 2 firearms from the 67-year-old's home. But again, red flag laws apply to guns only, right? Oh, we think you're a dangerous person, so we're going to take away your ability to purchase a firearm. We're going to take away any legally owned guns that you might have. Problem solved, right? Let's look at this headline again. Man shot and killed breaking into Oakland County home with axe to find ex-girlfriend. Yeah. He had a gun too, by the way. Yeah. Despite the red flag law, he was able to illegally get a hold of a gun, but he was able to walk into a sporting goods store and buy an axe. Because even if you're the subject of a red flag order, you can't buy a gun. You're perfectly entitled to buy gasoline, matches, an axe, a machete, whatever you want, whatever you might be able to use as a weapon. And of course, you are free to illegally acquire a firearm as well. And that's apparently what happened here. It was Wednesday morning around 10 a.m. when this 67-year-old broke into the home where his ex-girlfriend was staying. She was staying with her daughter, and her stepson was there as well, I guess, because, again, they were so concerned about the thought and prospect of violence here. So this guy breaks into the house with the axe. The family retreats upstairs to a bedroom that had a ensuite bathroom. They're on the phone with 911. Stepson is basically, got his shoulder up against the bedroom door trying to keep it closed. When the 67-year-old fires a shot through the door, stepson drops back, falls to the ground, not hit, thankfully, but just in surprise, wanted to get away from any other bullets that might have come through the door. And that's when the 67-year-old stepped through, made entry into that home. According to the Sheriff Michael Bouchard, he then told the woman's stepson, essentially, I'm not here for you, I'm here for her. And that is when the stepson drew his own firearm, fired a single round, striking the 67-year-old, identified as Galen Gavitt, in the head. He died at the scene. People in the home, safe and sound, because they did not just rely on a piece of paper to protect them. And this is a failure of Michigan's red flag law. It should be seen as such. And frankly, politicians who supported these red flag laws, like Gretchen Whitmer, who said they would stop incidents of domestic violence because they would prevent domestic violent offenders from getting a hold of a gun, I think they should face some serious questions about the failure of the state's red flag law here and the success of the armed citizen in stopping the threat. All right, finally today, our good deed of the day in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. A good Samaritan in Kansas who helped rescue a 74-year-old woman after a crash on I-35. And, I'm grateful that this good Samaritan was there. I would just say a note of caution. There are a lot of times when I am looking for armed citizen stories and my good Samaritan stories, and I'll run across stories where somebody did this exact thing. They stopped on the side of the road, helped somebody out, and they were struck by a car. So just please, if you do run across somebody who is in need on the side of the road, keep in mind, sometimes these things are traps, right? They are lures, and you do need to be able to protect yourself, but also please pay attention to the roadway as well, because the last thing we want is for somebody who is trying to do a good deed to end up suffering harm themselves. So Kansas Highway Patrol says this happened about 2:40 Wednesday afternoon. Emergency crews called to the area of northbound I-35 and Shawnee Mission Parkway near Kansas City, Kansas, on reports of a single vehicle collision. When they got there, they found a 2017 Ford Focus that had been driven by a 74-year-old woman headed north in the second lane of the interstate. The car began to drift to the right and then veered off the interstate into sort of the grassy area in between the north and southbound lanes, and then struck an embankment, flipped onto its passenger side, and the woman became trapped in the car. By the time first responders arrived, a passerby who saw what had happened had already stopped their car, gotten out, broke through the sunroof of the Ford, was able to hold the woman upright until crews could rescue her from the vehicles. Because, again, this is on the side of the road here. So she was taken to the University of Kansas Medical Center, thankfully with what are suspected to be minor injuries. She was wearing her seatbelt at the time. Police haven't released any further information, including the identity of that Good Samaritan in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing for a stranger in need. And yes, we thank that Good Samaritan for their very, very good deed. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program. As always, I'm looking forward to seeing you back here again on Monday for another show. But be sure to check out BearingArms.com throughout the weekend. We've got you updated with a full lineup of Second Amendment news and information, all of the latest news impacting your right to keep and bear arms. And we've got a great sale going on right now, again, for our VIP and VIP Gold memberships. Just use the promo code MAGA24, and you can get 60% off of your membership. You're going to get exclusive content. You're going to get an ad-free experience, the ability to comment on stories, but you will also be supporting the independent pro-Second Amendment journalism that we are doing at Bearing Arms. And your support is so critically important these days, so thank you again. Hope you have a fantastic few days until we have the chance to talk again in person. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.